Hey everyone, how you doing today? Thought I would show you what I've been working on a little bit here, and I started a new HV project, and this is version 1 of that. I got version 2 I'll show you in a second here. I just want to talk about tanks and HVs in general a little bit here. Try to explain what the heck what you're seeing here and why I'm building it in the first place. You might look at this kind of ridiculous. It's sort of a tank APC flatbed utility vehicle. So it's trying to do a lot of weird little things. It's more of a combat assist creation, but actually gets involved in combat as well. So at the front side of it, it is very tank-like. So it kind of looks like a tank of one origin or another. But then you got kind of this APC look on the side, and it's got a fairly decent sized interior space to it. Quite a number of these lower turrets as well. And what these lower turrets are actually for is to deal with ground troops. Just yesterday, I was running around with the Dagger tank, and then Excalibur had a tank, and we were just shooting your run-of-the-mill Xerox stuff up. Those POI clusters, with a bunch of POIs in a relatively small area, and a whole lot of pockets of ground troops all over the place. And the ground troops were really getting annoying because if you have your turrets set up so they could shoot the ground troops, half the time when you're trying to attack the POI, your guns fire everywhere but the POI and shoot at the ground guys. So you kind of want some turrets dedicated for the ground guys, and that's kind of what these are for. This whole lower section of turrets. I guess there's not one on the back of this version, but on the next version there is. And they're all dedicated just to shoot ground troops, and they're cheap turrets, just minigun ones. Don't need anything better for that. And it also has a single Gatling gun up front over here, and that is specifically for shooting out sentry guns on POIs. And that's another little utility function here. So really cheap ammo, cheap CPU costs on most of these weapons. Relatively speaking, and it could deal with ground troops and shoot out sentry guns on a POI. And then the turrets up here would probably be like a 4-pack of positrons and a 4-pack of rocket launchers, to actually, and all dedicated for the POI itself. The rear 2 turrets back here would be again dedicated for ground troops and drones. Things like that. So that's kind of the general format and idea behind this. And of course, because of the flatbed setup, you can bring along an SV salvager or miner or a tree cutter or some other utility creation, maybe even some kind of fighter or another small tank. I don't know, whatever, whatever you think you need for the situation. So anyway, let's go on to the next version of this, and this one is built up a little bit more. So a couple issues I had with the first one is I wanted to get a bigger strafing thruster in there beyond the small thrusters that one was dealing with. So I raised the whole ceiling height up to 1 block, and then made a whole new block row in between there. You kind of see what this looks like with the lights on. So I like the interior space better because of that too, because now your head's not pressed right against the ceiling, so it'll feel better on the interior, have a little more room to work with, things like that. And it also allowed me to get in, of course, another bigger strafing thruster over here. On the rear, I got rid of the ramp because now the ramp was even higher off the ground yet, and I just can't make it work. Not to mention I wanted to get a turret back here to shoot the ground troops behind you. So so I took out the ramp. But honestly, if you wanted to park HVs, SVs, well, SVs no problem. HVs, this thing is pretty low to the ground. When it's on the ground, it's not too difficult to get something on top of here and then dock it. So that's an HV, SV, piece of cake, obviously. So another thing that this needs to do is to be able to move around a fair amount of storage and deal with weight. So I really set this thing up with a pretty big hover assembly going on here. So it's got four packs of them in the corners, and that's actually working out pretty good. Other areas on materials used so far, all these side areas where all the thrusters and things are made of hardened steel, and then most of the rest of the creation is steel currently. So that's how it is, but the whole body is actually, all the blocks on the body are kind of in place. And currently, of course, it's going to weigh more, but currently, spec-wise on motion, it's moving pretty good. So 76 forward, 42 strafing, 50 on yaw. This was important to me. 60 reverse. Yeah, if you take a look at the roll, pitch, and yaw, the yaw is definitely the highest stat, and that's the one I wanted to have the highest stat. Roll, I could care less about on HV, to be honest. And pitch is useful for aiming like your fixed weapons, and also getting over cliffs and things like that. So a little bit of pitch is cool, but the yaw, that's your turning speed, and that is the most important. So right now in present form, at least using this cockpit here, this thing actually scoots along pretty good. It turns nice. It's stable. It feels relatively pretty good. Getting this thing around on. It's fairly agile. Again, of course, unfortunately, these numbers are going to go down from where they are, but with more weight and stuff. Wrong button there. There we go. But for the most part, it's working. So now I just want to talk about a couple last things here. One, I think on the paint scheme on this is going to be a human creation again. However, I don't think I'm going to paint it in my normal human paint scheme like this one or this one over here. Instead, I think I'm going to paint it like the Paladin over here. I wanted a little variety, a little difference, and I kind of enjoy painting different colors occasionally. Not to mention this has 3 different color schemes kind of built into it, so that'll be useful. And I also think it'll look pretty good accompanying this other tank here. I think they would kind of work well as a set, where this one does a lot of the functions that this one doesn't, but this one is more of a main battle tank, so this has got more POI takedown firepower than what this does, but this will complement that in doing the other things, shooting the grounds and the drones and the storage and moving the other things around. So yeah, I think it'll be painted like that. So one last thing I wanted to bring up in the video here too is tanks and tank styling things. Now it was a recent comment too. Someone mentioned that they liked the looks of the Demos. This was like my first heavy tank I think I ever built. I kind of like aspects of this one too. It's a weird tank. This one had a lot of, after I built it and whatnot, I mean, this was a different time when you could build things a lot heavier, use a lot more thrusters. Like this is all built of combat steel. It's got layers of combat steel in places. It's got a ton of thrusters on it. Like the whole like thruster, the whole back, a wall of this thing is practically a giant thruster. So obviously you can look at this, you could say, hey, this is not going to play good with Reforged Eden. And no, it does not. It doesn't play good with vanilla anymore either. It's excessively high on CPU. Beyond the CPU aspects of it, right? Now, if this was modified and I used some of those bigger Reforged Eden thrusters in here and lessen the hull weight by maybe switching it to hardened steel or something like that, it's got some other big time problems going on with it, and that is the line of sight from turrets. So this one had a couple weird restrictions on it too. One, it needed to be top dockable, so that forces you to have things coming up from the hull in like the middle or the sides of the hull that kind of interfere with turrets on the top side of it. But beyond that, I also used a lot of block work on the sides of these turrets to make it look nice. But that also stops these turrets from firing like sideways. And I did that all over the place. Like this missile launcher here can't fire forward. This one over here can't fire sideways. The artillery can't maneuver very good. So there's a lot of issues with line of sight. And I realized that after this tank and the next design of tank, my Gen 3 tanks, I refer to them as like the Ballista and that big Scar one. Those corrected that problem, but then I found ways to improve upon that more. And then I went to the 4th gen tanks, and that's kind of what these guys are over here, where these, all the turrets have a much better line of sight. So like every one of these turrets has a full 360 degree firing range on it. So all these can fire sideways or forward. All the turrets on this can fire forward at once, unlike the Demos, which can only fire a few of the turrets forward at once. despite having a lot more turrets on it. So it's just there's a lot of problems, and that's why I kind of went to this kind of design. Another reason why I went to Gen 4 or like this one is because of Reforged Eden and the fact that the moving anything that weighed anything at all around was horribly bad. So I had to try to make things as light as possible to have any maneuverability at all. And that's kind of why I ended up with this. So basically a big hollow front end and even more hollow stuff over here and just open area and stacked turrets. But it creates this wedge design look like all three of these have. And honestly, they don't look very good as tanks, and I don't really like the appearance of them all that much. But they're effective in game, and they have the good turret firing positions and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I went to that approach and why I've never built another tank like the Demos, or why I could even upgrade this tank. I mean, you could probably upgrade it somehow, but it's just the simple fact of the block work messing with the turret firing positions causes a lot of unnecessary problems. And I've tried to avoid that on all the newer tank builds. But then you end up with shapes that look like this every time. So unless you really go off the deep end, and this one I specifically wanted to build to look more like a real tank. It doesn't really look like any real tank out there, but it sort of has the general characteristics a little bit of it. So other than that, that's all I've got for today. Please let me know what you think, and if any ideas for this thing. Very last thing, I'm going to put a pause on doing that third Creel OPV at the time. It's going to be a big project. I don't have a lot of time right now, and I'm trying to work on these smaller things that are quick turnaround, and I didn't really want to get engaged in a probably multi-month project again if or at least a month building like a new Creel OPV at this point in time. I kind of want something I could bring in the game and play with a little bit. So I do plan on getting back to that at some point in time, as well as another project I wanted to do is to build a new version of the Scorpion. Again, it's probably my favorite tank that I made so far in performance. It's really good at taking down POIs quickly with the firepower on it, but I need to build a version that could accommodate all the new parts and maybe try to fix up some of the issues it had with kind of getting tripped up on things, getting around on the terrain and through twigs and stuff like that. So that's kind of the goal there. But if I do build a new version of that, it's gonna have to follow the same general idea of what this one's doing. So it's gonna look like a funky looking creation and not look very realistic at all. But that's what works best in game, honestly. So anyway, you all have yourself a great day. I'll talk to you later here.